Welcome back to Rich Words Music, where today we're doing a comparison and a shootout between two SG type guitars. This is the Harley Benton DC-Custom II, and this is the Epiphone Classic Worn SG P90 model. Now, in summer 2024, Harley Benton released the DC-Custom II. It's their take on an SG custom sort of guitar, and I think it's a fantastic instrument. For €299, it's got amazing features, it sounds great, it plays great, it's a wonderful guitar, and I have a full and dedicated in-depth video of this guitar elsewhere on my channel if you'd like to watch that. But the next natural thing for me to do, of course, was to compare it against the competition, and the competition that I happen to have at home is this, my 2020 Epiphone Classic Worn P90s SG in this lovely Worn Inverness Green finish. It's a wonderful guitar, and I know that this guitar has P90s and this has humbuckers with a coil split, it must be said, but I don't own an SG Custom at the moment, so we're going to have to work with what I've got. Anyway, in this video I'll start by telling you the specs and the features of both of these guitars, then I'll play them for you in as many different musical styles as I can manage. There should be a riff for every musical taste here, and at the end I'll give you some more in-depth opinions about both guitars because I've played them both a lot, especially this one over nearly 4 years, and I'll tell you which one I think is better value for your money if you're looking for a new SG type guitar in 2024 and beyond. So stick around for that. Timestamps to everything down in the comments and the descriptions. But let's start with those specifications and features, and we'll begin with the DC-Custom II by Harley Benton. The DC-Custom II is Harley Benton's newest take, as of summer 2024, on the double cutaway SG style of electric guitar. And for my mind, it's kind of a mix between an SG, an SG Custom, and perhaps something a bit more metal leaning, like an ESP Viper 256 model or something like that. Now, it'll set you back €299 at time of filming, and you get, as usual with Harley Benton, quite a lot for your money. Now, underneath this beautiful white finish and the matching gold hardware, you get a meranti body and a meranti neck with a roasted jatoba fingerboard. Meranti is a mahogany-esque tone wood. Now, on the front of the body itself, it's a pretty pared back and simplified SG sort of affair. We have two pickups, and they're Tesla pickups. They're Tesla's TM VR-Nitro Alnico 5 humbuckers, to be precise, and this being Harley Benton and Tesla, we get a little bit of extra too. These are high output humbuckers and should be great for modern metal stuff and classic humbucking clean tones alike, but on the pull-up tone pot, we can split them down to single coils too. So you've got single coils and humbucking tones available with this guitar, meaning it should be extremely versatile. So master tone switch there, three-way selector switch, and a master volume knob. We also have your typical SG type tunematic bridge and stop bar tailpiece operation here as well. And if I just move us around to the back of the body there, you can see that we have great upper fret access here, and you can see that the upper strap pin is here as opposed to at the heel of the neck where it joins the body. So that should be good for the balance of the guitar as well. And moving up to the neck, we have a meranti neck and the roasted jatoba fingerboard here, which is a nice reddish brown color, but if you know your SG Customs, you'll know that you can get them with ebony, and the darkness of that would look fantastic juxtaposed against the white and the gold on the rest of the guitar. But anyway, for this price, I don't think we're going to get ebony. Now, we've got 24 frets on this guitar, and they're medium jumbo Blacksmith stainless steel frets, no less. So for €299, we're getting stainless steel frets on this guitar, which I think is a fantastic value for money proposition. Binding on the neck and the headstock as well, of course, because this is a custom sort of guitar. Now, we've got a 42mm graphite nut, a 628mm scale length, so Gibson scale length, and the fingerboard radius is 350mm, so very flat. That's about 13 3/4 inches. Now, the neck profile is a medium C shape, and it feels very nice and comfy in the hand. Starts to get a little bit chunkier as you move up to the top end of the board. Now, moving up to the headstock, you've got, because this is a custom-esque model, a bit of a design flourish there on the headstock, and if I turn it over, gold looking Grover tuners on this guitar as well. So you do get an awful lot for your money for €299 with the DC-Custom II, but let's see what you get with the Epiphone SG. And this is the 2020 model Epiphone SG Classic Worn P90 edition in this beautiful satin Worn Inverness Green finish. Now, in 2024, this guitar new will set you back between $400 and $450 or euros, although I've seen some stores blowing it out recently at $330, so it's very, very close in price to the DC-Custom II, and it's cheaper than current Epiphone standard or custom SGs with humbucking pickups. I was very lucky to get this model for a very, very affordable price on the local eBay marketplace shortly after it was released. I've had it for almost 4 years, and I love this guitar. Now, this being an Epiphone, you get a mahogany body and a mahogany neck on this, and an Indian Laurel fingerboard. We have two Epiphone Soapbar P90 pickups here with a three-way selector switch and a volume and tone for each pickup. We also get this super cool batwing black headstock, and I just think that this guitar looks so fantastic all round. Look at the beautiful grain on the mahogany. We've got a bit of a subtle flame going on too. It's a really fantastic looking instrument, and the fact that it's satin too makes it feel so sleek and smooth and easy to play. And that continues to the neck as well, because we've got a beautiful satin neck finish here too. Really smooth and slick and easy to get up and down. This is Epiphone's slim taper D shape, a famed neck profile in the industry, and I think it's one that most players tend to love or hate. For me personally, my first serious guitar was an Epiphone SG way back in the day, so I know and love this neck profile, and this one is just so much a feeling of being at home for me. I really like it, but it's significantly different in terms of feel to the Harley Benton, so that's definitely something to take into account if it's in your interests. Now we've got a 43mm Graphtec nut on this guitar, 628mm scale length, so Gibson scale length again, and a fairly flat but not quite as flat as the Harley Benton 12-inch fingerboard radius here. We have dot inlays on this guitar and binding on the neck too, so it's a super cool looking instrument from the bottom of the body all the way up to the new Epiphone headstock shape here, a black headstock that looks super cool, and we've got vintage style Epiphone deluxe tuners here too. So this is the 2020 Epiphone SG Classic Worn in Worn Inverness Green, and what we're going to do next is put it up against the Harley Benton DC-Custom II. While I've got them both in my hands though, let me just show you this. You can see that the Harley Benton has a bigger, thicker, fatter body all round. It's a larger, much more unwieldy beast in that sense, and I'll tell you about the weights of the guitars in the opinion part, but rest assured that this one is much heavier than the Epiphone. But anyway, what we're going to do next is play these two guitars in as many different musical styles as I can manage. My rig for today is going to be my Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 amplifier. We'll use a couple of overdrive pedals to spice things up, and we'll use 3 of the channels on the amp too, and we'll play everything from the cleanest of cleans using the split single coils on here, the humbuckers too, and the P90s on the Epiphone, all the way through to some down-tuned metal in drop D, to see how versatile these guitars are, to hear how similar the pickups sound and how different they sound too. And hopefully by the end you'll get a feel for which one is going to work best for the kind of music that you make. Enough talk then, it's the Harley Benton DC-Custom II up against the Epiphone SG Classic Worn P90s. Let's play them now and we'll speak in a bit more detail about them afterwards. Okay then, so that was the Harley Benton DC-Custom II up against my 2020 Epiphone SG Classic Worn P90 model, and I hope you enjoyed the playing and the tones. Leave me a comment telling me which of the guitars you think sounds best. Do you prefer the Tesla humbuckers in the Harley Benton, or are you more of a fan of the snarling soap bar P90s in the Epiphone? Comments and thoughts down there please, and I look forward to hearing what you guys think as usual. But what I'm going to do now is give you a few more of my opinions. I've had the Epiphone now for almost 4 years, and I've had this one for almost 4 weeks, which is not quite the same, but I've played them both quite a lot in that time, and I have quite a lot of information to share with you about both of those guitars. Now, if you're in the market and you're looking for a sub $500 SG type instrument or something like that, I think both of these are going to be in your thoughts, or at least on your shortlist. And I think you're probably going to be looking at a number of different categories when you come to choosing the guitar that you spend your own hard-earned money on. And so what I'm going to do now is go through some of those different categories and decide a winner for each one, and maybe my thoughts will help you with that process. So we'll start with the very first thing that you look at when you're looking for a new guitar, or at least I do, and that's how the guitars look, the aesthetics, what they look like when they're hanging on the wall when you go into the store or when you check them out online. And well, I think both of these guitars look fantastic. I love the white and gold of the DC-Custom II. I actually think I prefer the cherry red version of this guitar, although I haven't seen that one in the flesh, but I can't get past that beautiful Worn Inverness Green satin finish on the Epiphone with the black hardware and the laurel board. I wish it was rosewood, but it's laurel, but it looks good anyway, and that guitar is one of the most beautiful I own, and I think in that regard the Epiphone wins for me. That's one of the few guitars that I have that sometimes I just take it off the rack just to kind of look at it. I don't even need to play it every day, I just sometimes look at it and take in its beauty and get inspired to make music. So the Epiphone wins in the looks department. I think the next thing you're going to look at would be the price tag, and of course straight off the bat we can say that the Harley Benton is cheaper, and therefore it wins in terms of value for money. And when you take into account some of the hardware that we've got on it as well, the Tesla pickups, the Blacksmith stainless steel frets, for €299, that's incredible value for money. In 2024 the Epiphone new at most stores is about $400 to $450 or euros, although I have seen some stores blowing it out at $330, which makes it much closer in price to the Harley Benton. I paid $250 for it back in the day, which I think was a fantastic deal because the guitar was relatively new at that point, and I'm super happy that I got it for that price. That was an absolute bargain. But again, you get Epiphone hardware and Epiphone stuff on the Epiphone. Epiphone pickups, Epiphone deluxe tuners, you get a Graftech nut too, which I think is pretty cool as well. But overall, I can't look past these stainless steel frets and the Grovers and the Teslas in the Harley Benton for the cheaper price. It wins on price and value for money in that sense. The next thing that we would look at would be the hardware and the fixtures and fittings, the quality of the guitar. And I've just talked about a lot of them, but again, you get these stainless steel frets on the Harley Benton, that's fantastic. You get these Tesla pickups, you get the Grover tuners. These are all named features, named parts, and that carries a certain gravitas, I think, with this guitar, especially considering the price. And I think the hardware and the build quality for this price is fantastic in that regard. And this specific guitar came very well set up straight out of the box too. The neck's been done very well, the frets are really good, the intonation, the action, the nuts being cut well, everything does its job perfectly. I can't find any faults with it, and I think it scores very highly in that regard. Now the hardware and the quality of the Epiphone is decent quality Epiphone stuff, it's similar quality overall, but it costs more, and you don't have the name of the Grovers, you don't have the names of the Tesla or the Blacksmith stainless steel frets, so the Epiphone loses just a couple of marks there in that regard, but it's a great quality guitar anyway. Now one thing I can say about the Epiphone guitar is that it doesn't really like cold winters where I live in Europe, and so after every winter is done and the weather starts to get nice, it needs another setup. I don't know if that'll be the case with the Harley Benton, but the Epiphone does need a bit of TLC here and there, and so in that regard I'm going to give the build quality again to the Harley Benton, especially when considering the price as well. The next thing to look at would be the playability of the two guitars, and this is where they differ greatly, and it's also going to be something which is very personal to every player. So try both guitars if you can before you spend your money, but these are my thoughts on the playability. Firstly, the necks are very, very different. Now the neck on the Harley Benton is significantly chunkier, first off, and it also has a poly finish, which can have a propensity to get sticky if you're a sweaty player, and that makes it a little bit less sleek and easy to get up and down than the Epiphone. Now the Epiphone has a satin neck, which is a joy to play, and it's slimmer. It's Epiphone's slim taper D profile. That's a neck that I've played for decades and decades now, so I love that neck. And while I normally go for chunkier necks, the feel of that Epiphone is so much like home base for me that I just have to give it to the Epiphone in terms of necks, in terms of the playability score. Now in terms of the rest of the bodies and the playability, the Harley Benton is a bigger, longer, thicker, chunkier beast overall. I've showed you that in some of the B-roll, maybe here, maybe earlier, but it is larger in every respect, and it's also consequently much heavier. This specific DC Custom II weighs 3.7 kilograms, which is about 8 pounds 4, which is a good pound or so too heavy for my personal preference, while the Epiphone SG Classic weighs in at 2.8 kilograms, which is about 6 pounds 4, and that is a fantastic weight for me. It could even be a little bit heavier and I'd be totally happy with it, but in terms of having a guitar stood up, playing a show for a couple of hours a night, well, for me it's going to be the Epiphone every time. And one final thing about the playability, often with SG type guitars you get neck dive, where the headstock is heavier than the body and it kind of sinks down like that when you stand up to play. Thankfully, this is not a problem with either of these two guitars. I've done the same test with both of them with the same strap in the same conditions, and well, it worked like a charm both times. So no problems with the balance of either guitar. But in terms of playability, I've got to give it to that lovely satin Epiphone. The next category to compare is the sounds of the two guitars, and this is another aspect where it's going to be totally personal, what you prefer. And of course we've got two very different kinds of pickups in these guitars. It's like apples and oranges in a sense, because the Harley Benton has these Tesla humbuckers and the Epiphone has the Epiphone P90s. Now those are very different pickups overall, but in some circumstances they sound rather similar, while in others they couldn't sound more contrasting. Now again, it's going to be a personal taste thing, what you prefer, and it's also going to depend on the kind of music that you want to make with these guitars, but overall these are my thoughts on the sounds. I think the Harley Benton is a more versatile guitar overall. I think it's a more polite sounding guitar too. Now these Tesla pickups are very smooth, they have high output, and they're great for modern metal stuff as well. They're great for cleans too, and I really like the coil splits, especially for higher gain stuff as well. You get great cleans out of this guitar, great classic rock tones, great indie rock tones, and great hard rock and metal sounds as well. The humbuckers are very quiet, the single coils on the coil split mode are obviously a bit louder, but this is a guitar that you can play anything with without having a huge amount of character to any of the tones. I will say that I do think this guitar is a little bit dark on the clean channel of my amp and the crunch channel when I'm doing the classic rock AC/DC sorts of stuff. This is of course something that you could dial out of any amp with a tweak of the treble knob, but I always want to keep my settings the same between guitars so you can really hear how different the two guitars sound when the amp's on the same settings. Now the P90s and the Epiphone are wonderful pickups, but they're different. They're a snarling beast, they're raucous, they're out of control, they're wild, they're rock and roll, they're punk, and I love them for that. Now they sound a little bit honky in the middle, especially for clean stuff, and you can do great clean tones with them, but they really want to go, they really want to do rock. They're great for indie, they're great for classic rock, they're great for punk rock and hard rock as well, and they do get very, very noisy when you start playing metal with them too. You'll have heard that between some of the riffs, but P90s have a propensity to do that, and if it's a problem for you, you can use a noise gate to dial that out. But I think that the P90s and the Epiphone have a lot more tonal character than the Teslas in the Harley Benton in a certain way. That might be something that you like, that snarling mid-range bark, but it might be something that you don't quite like so much, and you might prefer the smoothness and the high fidelity of the Teslas. It's a total taste thing, and for me personally, if I was choosing between one of these two in terms of sounds, well, I'd have to split this one up. I think it's a dead heat in terms of tonal qualities. If I was going to be playing a covers gig where I needed every kind of sound under the sun over a 30-song set list over a couple of hours, I'd pick the Harley Benton because you can do anything with it. But if I was playing a punk show or a rock and roll show, well, I'd pick the Epiphone every time for that because you can't beat the raw attitude of those P90 pickups. Really interested to hear what you think about that debate, so let me know in the comments. Now, if you've been watching this video and you like the idea of one of these guitars, but you'd kind of like to have the other sort of pickups in them, well, there are options from both of these brands. Harley Benton make a number of different DC guitars. They're not all DC customs. You can get some with P90s, just like my DC-60 Junior, for example. That's like an SG Junior type of guitar with a single P90. And there are other more standard DC SG type guitars available with Roswell pickups, for example. Now with Epiphone, of course, you have an option of many different standard or custom SG models with different pickup configurations, different woods, ebony fingerboards if you want those too. And both of these guitars, both of these brands have DC SG type guitars guitars at many different price points. So check out Thomann for the Harley Bentons and your local Epiphone dealer for any of the Epiphone guitars and find the one that works best for you. I'm pretty sure there's an SG that works for everybody and you maybe just don't know it yet. In conclusion then, these are two fantastic guitars, and while they have certain similarities in terms of their body shape and the overall philosophy behind the guitars, they couldn't be more different in some respects. I think they're both fantastic value for money, although it's very, very hard to beat the Harley Benton for 299 euros. But there are some things about the Epiphone that make it extremely attractive to me. Now, if I were to be walking into a music store and both of these guitars were on the wall and I had to choose just one, well, that's a really, really tricky decision for me. Now, in terms of price, the Harley Benton obviously wins there, but I'd pick the Epiphone off the wall for looks. After playing them both, I'd probably prefer the Epiphone because of its lovely, sleek, slim satin neck. And in terms of sounds, well, depending on what day I was going into the store and what I was looking for, I could end up choosing one over the other. But I'd probably say, I think I can use a car analogy here. Now, that's the first time that's ever happened on this channel, and it will probably be the last as well. But anyway, the Harley Benton has Tesla pickups, and it's kind of like a Tesla car. It's kind of like a smooth, sleek, modern, quiet electric vehicle with all the mod cons, but less character than something like an old Ford Mustang, which is what I would equate the Epiphone SG to, and not the modern day electric Mustang, the old roaring, snarling beast of a Mustang that's really hard to tether, goes fast and looks great doing it. It's got a whole lot of character, a whole lot of snarling, raucous punk rock and roll attitude, and in that regard, I'd take it with my heart over the Harley Benton, and I'd take the Harley Benton with my head over the Epiphone. So that's a pretty weird analogy at the end of the day, but overall they both sound fantastic. I'd love to own them both, so I'd pick the Epiphone for its snarling, raucous, punk rock and roll attitude. But hey, it might be a different story if we had a satin neck on the Harley Benton, and if it weighed a pound or a kilogram less, well, we'd have to talk again. Anyway, I hope this video has answered all of your questions about these two guitars. I hope it's made it a bit clearer for you if you're choosing between two guitars like this, but let me know if you have any more questions and I shall do my best to answer you to the fullest. And if you're still around, it would really make my day if you wanted to like this video, or maybe even subscribe to my little channel, because that really does help. But that's been it for today's video. I've been Rich, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.